everyone, and welcome to the Propcast. My name is Louisa Dickens, co-founder of Elmore Re and board director of the UKPA, and I shall be your weekly host. Each week for 30 minutes, we'll be connecting the VCs, prop tech startups, and real estate professionals globally, and assist in bridging that famous communication gap we all love talking about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to season 4 of the Propcast. This season, we are kicking off with Charlie Wade, the EMEA Managing Director for VTS, which is the industry's leading leasing and asset management software. So welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thank you very much for having me, Louisa. I'm excited to kick off your season 4 and start of a new year. So yeah, thank you for having me on the show. Now,
since we have all had one hell of a 12 months, today we will be chatting through how VTS has coped, developed their product, kept their expansion going, and, really looked after their expanding team. But first, let's give a little bit of an introduction to Charlie before we start with all the questions. So with over 12 billion square feet managed on the platform, VTS is the fastest growing technology company in commercial real estate history. And VTS reached unicorn recently through the $19 million Series D fundraise, which is the largest software funding round in the history of commercial property. This investment marked the first time several leading institutional real estate investors have made an investment of this magnitude in the property technology company, which is seriously impressive. And also, it's a massive step forward for the prop tech industry. I'm sure a few of you listening know sort of where Wade fits into this, but I'll shed a bit of light into Wade's story. So prior to joining VTS, Wade worked at the top real estate consultancy firm, Jones Lang LaSalle, working in London, New York, Silicon Valley. Completing his degree at Reading University, he headed straight to London, where he soon joined the JLL agency business before moving to the US to lead the business development for the West Coast hub of Jones Lang LaSalle's international desk. At VTS, Charlie has helped facilitate the growth of the UK and European offer for VTS. And a few fun facts for everyone listening. 1 in 3 office buildings in central London is now managed by VTS, which is also seriously impressive. Now, this fast-scaling company is used by the big names such as Knight Frank, British Land, the Crown Estate, Blackstone, and Brookfield. So I guess without further ado, welcome to the show, Charlie. And I've given a very brief summary to your journey to becoming, the managing director for EMEA for VTS. But I'm sure the audience would love to hear a little bit more about how you went from sort of Reading to New York, Silicon Valley, back to London, well, I guess Chichester now. Tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, thanks, Louisa. It's amazing what you can find out on LinkedIn, isn't it? I think you did a very, very good and comprehensive journey there. But I've been in the industry for a little over 15 years, but it sometimes feels like it's been a lot more than that. As you mentioned, I came straight out of Reading University, very fortunate to get on the graduate recruitment program at JLL. I spent just shy of about 10 years at JLL. And I have to admit that, JLL was a fantastic opportunity. The recruitment program at the time was fantastic. It's a fantastic business, still is a fantastic business. And it gave you so much exposure to the different sort of facets and areas within commercial real estate that really allowed me to sort of understand what I cared about and what I loved. It gave me the opportunity, as you mentioned, to move to the US. So again, I did that through JLL. And I spent a little time in the New York market, which was a huge learning experience. That market is very special and very unique. There's some huge similarities between the London and New York market, and there's also big differences. And it was fascinating to get an insight into that. But off the back of that, I was actually offered a role on the West Coast. So I made my way across to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, where I effectively sort of headed up the iDesk for the West Coast there, and I was able to sort of grow the corporate relationships across both the US and Europe. Interestingly, there was the opportunity where I actually met Nick and Ryan for the first time, founders of VTS. Ryan pitched me the VTS vision when I got back to the UK. It was a multi-year strategy for the UK, and the way he pitched it and sold it, I have to admit, I was pretty much immediately in. The challenge was huge. The opportunity, I guess, was even bigger. And 5 years on at VTS, here we are.
And so moving from a business like Jones Lang LaSalle to, well, I guess VTS, it was pretty early stage now. What was it like transitioning between those types of businesses and into completely different sort of roles?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've been given a bit of an insight into that sort of entrepreneurial spirit that exists, and I think people get a bit of a taste of that bug and they're bit, so to speak. But when I was in the US, US JLL was a bit of a different beast, and when I came back to the UK, I was quite hungry for more of that and a bit more of a challenge, and to be able to kind of let those entrepreneurial juices flow. I have to admit, at the time, it wasn't so much about moving from a traditional commercial real estate business to a prop tech company, right? It was a challenge and an opportunity to learn new skills in a new role at a new company. Again, like JLL was a fantastic business and still is a fantastic business. But given I got a taste of that entrepreneurial spirit, I kind of wanted more. And VTS at the time was 3 years into their journey. It was a 3-year-old CRE tech, which is what it was called back then, startup, and they could give me that opportunity. And so leading the charge and being part of the international growth for the company has been an incredibly exciting journey. And, it's by no means over yet. In fact, a lot of people would argue that we spent the last 8 years building the foundations for the exciting bit, which is to come through this year and into next.
So what's when you joined, what was the VTS mission and what's the future mission?
Well, the VTS mission when I joined, which was a little over 5 years ago, was pretty much the same as the mission that we are on today. Did we think we'd take the same path and we'd get from A to B to C the way we thought? Of course not. But the mission has been pretty consistent from the day Nick and Ryan actually founded the company back in sort of 2012. Our mission is to cement our position as the modern operating system for commercial real estate. In essence, it's where the place where occupier transactions take place and real-time market data sort of comes to life, right? You've probably seen that slogan, that mantra on our website. But sort of to break that down, our vision is to create a platform for those that operate commercial real estate to collaborate, manage, and ultimately support their sort of day-to-day tasks. We've often been referred to, or some have coined and said, that we're the sort of Bloomberg for commercial real estate, which is a very flattering and very interesting prospect.
I take that.
Well, yeah, especially given that I guess Bloomberg digitalized the finance industry in the 80s. I'm a little bit hopeful that we're slightly different to what Bloomberg did back then to now. Technology, if nothing else, has certainly changed. And I don't think the industry is 30 years behind the finance industry, but the concept of streaming transactions, in our case, between landlords and tenants, and supporting the industry with best-in-class real-time market data, that is, in essence, our mission. And as you mentioned earlier, with 12 billion square feet being managed on the platform today, 750 customers, 50,000 users leveraging our technology, every single day, we are absolutely edging closer and closer to that kind of ultimate vision of creating that modern operating system and single platform.
And you briefly mentioned, obviously, you've worked in different cities and different real estate markets. Our listeners are global. We've got obviously lots in the US, lots in Europe. How has the product and growth been different between, I guess, the US and Europe?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one thing that is hopefully obvious, and I think people realize, is you can't just take a US product and transplant it into the UK or into France or into India or any other, other markets that we're in. I think we're in 41 or 2 countries now. It's not one size fits all. It requires partnering with local clients to ensure that nuances of their processes or the way they run their workflows are reflected in the product. whether it's a simple thing like currency, right? Dollars to pounds to euros, or units of measure, meters versus square feet, or even really sort of specific differences in terminology like the 1954 Act or ITZA from a UK perspective. These things are very important to the way that businesses are managed, commercial real estate businesses are managed and operate in a local market. And the product has to reflect that. That being said, there are also some very basic commercial real estate fundamentals that transcend local markets, countries, and even companies. I think where VTS has managed to strike the right balance, and look, it's been through trial and error, and it's been a massive learning curve, but is that it's our ability to create a balance through listening to our customers, through our own learning and experience and insight, and it's enabled us to kind of maintain that growth year on year. Product development is as much an art as a science. Having the right team on board, and ultimately having a good mix of technology professionals and, in our case, commercial real estate professionals, has enabled us to do that. And of course, it goes without saying, we are only where we are, and only the growth we've had and the success we've had from the support and advice that we've got from our clients and the industry. Like, they have very much been our partner and leading light. We don't develop technology for technology's sake. We develop solutions based on what our clients are telling us they need. And it's that partnership that has enabled us to grow, into this kind of multi-country, multi sort of market products that we have today.
I guess that leads us quite nicely into our next question, which is obviously about your expansion across Europe. Lots of businesses have tried doing this, some successful, some less successful. What would you say your biggest challenge was when you were when you started?
Yeah, there's been lots of challenges, and there continue to be many, many challenges. We certainly don't have all the answers, but we are incredibly lucky that we've been able to experience a lot in quite a short period of time. I would say our biggest obstacle, and this remains true today just as much as it probably was at the beginning, and in sort of growing and successfully scaling a business, because you can grow it at a pace, but then how do you scale it and maintain it, is we have to be honest with ourselves that we can only do so much. I would say our biggest challenge as a company is figuring out what to prioritize and what ultimately to put on the back burner until another day. We want to do everything. That's just human nature. While at the same time you're figuring out your prioritization list, you have to remain agile, right? And flexible. You've got to be able to pivot when needed. Ultimately, the strategy might have to change based on something happening in the market. And I'm sure we'll talk about COVID and the pandemic, from last year and this year. But, that gets harder and harder as a company grows and gets bigger, because there's more people, more teams, and more competing priorities to ultimately manage. So I would say our biggest obstacle is ourselves as we continue to grow and scale. And Nick says it all the time. It's ours to mess up. It's ours to lose. And, we have to maintain that spirit and that culture that got us to where we are, through the next year, 2 years, 3 years, as we continue that growth. I'd say that's probably one of our biggest challenges.
And I guess, is there a particular sort of moment that sticks out for you, or whether it's I know these are standards of questions, but what about a particular success story when you first started launching Europe? Was it a big client which you secured? What was it?
From a European perspective?
Yeah.
I would say year one for us was pretty exciting. We were given a bit of a blank piece of paper by Nick and Ryan to go out and figure it out for a year. What does the UK market need? What is the European opportunity? What can we take from what we've learned in the US and the sort of first 3-4 years of rolling out a product, which at the time I think we'd rolled out about 2 billion square feet. So if you think about where we've come, over 5 years from 2 billion to 12 billion, we learned a lot in the US, but we certainly didn't have, as many of the answers as we have today. I'd say sort of one of our most successful periods was that first year. It was incredibly exciting. And I think we managed to sign up 35 UK landlords and a huge proportion of those were central London owners. And so we made quite a big statement in year one and intent. And that in turn enabled us to get the right partners and the right customers and clients who have been those customers and partners and clients ever since to really help us scale and grow. As I continue to mention, it's a partnership between, what we can bring on the technology side and the insight side and being able to kind of take a step back and make this our day-to-day business and support our clients, and then them to provide us with the feedback and the advice and, tell us what their priorities are and where they need to go next. So we're constantly working hand in hand. And I'd say the biggest success were a few of the logos we managed to secure in year one, because they've been fundamental in supporting us through, the last 5 years and helping us to grow. And that's everything from the Landsec to the Crown Estates to the British Lands within central London to, some of the bigger corporates like the Blackstones, the Oxfords, the LaSalle's, GIs, etc. It's been a journey, but it's been great to work with those types of businesses and to spend so much time with those businesses over the last sort of 5 years.
Well, those are some pretty big names, I'm not going to lie, and congratulations.
Position yourself to thrive with a 5-week course that covers the essentials of designing, developing, marketing and operating offices in 2021 and beyond. Check out the Future-Proof Office course at realinnovationacademy.com. Quote LMRE for a 10% discount.
Now, we touched upon the C word earlier. Well, what has the response been to sort of COVID-19 this year from VTS?
Well, obviously this year's just starting off. So I guess we look back to last year. I think the impact of the pandemic is probably a perfect example of what I mentioned earlier, our ability as a company to be agile, to be nimble, to flex and pivot, if you like. There is no doubt that while the industry was going through change and was transforming ahead of COVID and the pandemic, overnight, COVID accelerated this shift towards this sort of reliance on technology. In essence, you might argue that 5 years worth of adoption and change was kind of forced to take place in 5 months. VTS as a business also had to adapt. We not only faced the same challenges as every other business that was forced to work remotely, manage their business from home, et cetera, but we had to react pretty quickly to the sudden change in demands from our client base. In essence, we accelerated what was probably a 12 to 18 month product roadmap into less than 6 months, which, for any technology companies listening out there, realize that is no mean feat. As I mentioned earlier, other initiatives had to take a bit of a backseat, and rightly so. But to me, this was really testament to our company's ability to do what is needed at that moment in time to get the job done, to continue with our vision and to continue with the sort of transformation of the industry. And it's been an incredibly challenging year last year, but also one that is full of exciting opportunity. And it set us up for what is going to be an incredibly exciting 2021 and 2022 for us as a business.
And in terms of integration, from my side, I see lots of a skill shortage in good solution engineers, or that's what they call in the US. In the UK, we call them integration managers. How was the whole integration process? When we were in and out of lockdown, how did you facilitate that? That
in terms of a technical perspective with our clients, or in terms of integrating our team as we've grown and everything else?
Well, actually, I was talking about more of a technical perspective with the clients, but we'll go on to our sort of next point after that about, how do you maintain a good company culture? But let's start with the technical aspect.
So from a technical aspect, we're a modern business. We're 8 years old and we're a technology company. So you would expect us to have the tools, the resources, the culture, all of those things that are required in order for us to be able to adapt pretty quickly to having to work remotely. So I would say from a technical perspective, it wasn't that big a shift. In fact, we leverage our scale in the US and our sort of bench of industry experts constantly from a European perspective. So we're kind of always working remotely. We're always bringing in people that sit in our implementation team or in our data team or in our research team. We're always bringing them into our client conversations in Europe, and they're always supporting us in helping to sort of integrate clients and support them from a sort of technology perspective. So I would say from a tools perspective, it was just business as usual, and it didn't really disrupt our ability to service our clients. That being said, the commercial real estate industry, just like the way that we manage our business, it's a relationship industry. And so not being able to spend the time in our clients' offices, not being able to build relationships with the guys and girls that were ultimately going to be required to give up their time and commit to working with us to help with these integrations, not being able to, do what we do best, which is try and bring different parts of the industry get together, back office, front office, your integration specialist that sits on your technology or IT team with your, asset manager who's at the coalface doing deals. Forcing those teams to actually spend time together and understand what each other are trying to do, and then sort of almost being this sort of broker in the middle to help facilitate that change. That is much harder in a remote world, especially when your clients have got other things on their priority list. Again, that being said, being remote and having access to data and, as I mentioned, access to technology did bring VTS much higher on the priority list, even with tenants with rent relief requests and struggling business plans, et cetera, were unfolding. So, every client was different, but I'd say by and large, it wasn't, as bad as perhaps we might have predicted going into the year. It actually just created different challenges, and again, testament to our integrations and solutions team to be able to flex and change accordingly.
Well, it's not bad to be challenged. I think if we weren't challenged, we would be terribly bored and not as good as we are at our jobs today. Now, let's talk about company culture. Every person I know that works at VTS loves it. I did a webinar with actually VTS alumni in the US who all gone on to businesses like Dealpath, Landis, Juniper Square, and they, even though they've now left, they loved it. They were all from different sort of roles. But what's key to keeping a company culture, especially during challenging times?
I mean, I think the reality is it's difficult, right? Maintaining a culture, especially within the VTS one, which thrives on human contact, relationships, and as I mentioned, being in we were talking about just before this call, being in the office together as a team. It's very hard to recreate some of those things in a remote world. That being said, I think we've done our best to try and recreate this. We've done all the usual ideas of virtual social events, games, gifts back to people's houses, swag. Everyone likes the nice little, gift that appears on their door. Being very mindful of sort of health and wellness, and making sure that we are doing our best to consider, everybody's different circumstances, whether you are some of our younger teams stuck in the smallest, one-bed flat in the middle of town, not able to get out, to, maybe some of our other team that have got families and are trying to balance childcare and two parents working. Like, everybody has their challenges, and it's about, I think, acknowledging that. Nothing can replace the impact of the office. I'm a big believer that, and your ability to sort of create and maintain the culture that the office brings, it just can't be replaced. But I will say, and take this as an opportunity to say, that I'm incredibly privileged to work at a company that didn't hesitate in figuring out how to manage our business in a remote world. And one that sort of accepted things were going to be different for an extended period of time, and didn't just kind of bury our head in the sand and hope this would all go away. Our people team did a phenomenal job in making sure we had the tools and we had the resources we needed to try and maintain our company culture, from support with childcare to resources around health and wellness. They were called to action in the second week of March, and they crushed it. They did not hesitate, and they managed to maintain that through 2020, which is I couldn't praise our people team enough. And I do feel incredibly proud to work at a company that ultimately put their people first and made sure they figured that out before we worried about, how we were then going to run and manage our business.
Yeah, I think you spoke about prioritizing things earlier, and I think a common mistake that businesses who want to scale at such drastic speed often make is they don't look after people. That is your business. Obviously, got to sort the tech, but without good people that trust you and want to, work with you, and if you don't look after them, you have no business. Now, you've obviously got an incredible team supporting you and, growing the business. What's going back to the VTS product? What can we expect for the rest of this year, 2021? Any sort of developments that are coming out?
Yeah, there's always things coming out. I mean, as I kind of alluded to, much of our product development for 2021 and 2022 certainly kicked off and took place during the pandemic, during COVID, right? And it's been focused on ensuring our clients have the resources and the solutions they need to navigate the pandemic last year, but also, the long tail effects going through 2021. While 2020 certainly was a challenge, I think there are other challenges that we still need to face on the horizon. And so we will continue to work with our clients to expand those products and those solutions. And I guess the vision for the VTS platform, I think, is really going to come to life in a big way through 2021. And the success that you've probably seen us have in New York through the sort of last 6 months of 2020, you're going to see that success start to get replicated in other markets that we operate in. And again, working with our clients, we're going to see the VTS platform and the VTS vision that we sort of alluded to earlier really come to life outside of just New York. And I think that's probably what to look out for in 2021. Less about what new products and more about the products you've already got, VTS, how you're going to deploy them and how you're going to kind of, support the industry in those markets.
And what about acquisitions? VTS hasn't made any so far. Could we expect this to potentially change?
Well, I mean, I guess from a European perspective, you're probably saying VTS hasn't made any acquisitions. We've obviously made 2 very large acquisitions, and for a company of our size, Property Capsule and then also the Hightower acquisition were pretty sizable. But yes, as we continue to grow and deploy some of our strategic capital, we are always on the lookout for opportunities that make sense for our business and allow us to expand our offering in a way that makes life easier for our users. So whether it's Europe, whether it's the US, whether it's a combination of the two, if you look at the caliber of the guys and girls we've got in the VTS stable, Bob Bees, our CFO, being one of them, you'll know that, in Bob's last role, I think he did something crazy like 32 mergers and acquisitions in the final year of his role before joining VTS. So he is a veteran, and, with someone like that in your corner, you're going to take advantage of it. And any opportunities that come up, if they make sense, I'm sure you'll see some more announcements on that in due course.
Well, very exciting, Charlie. Okay, now going back to the very beginning of our conversation, you made the jump from Jones Lang LaSalle to VTS. Plenty of our listeners, they vary from obviously the VCs, the funds, but also, fairly junior people in the real estate world who are dipping their toe into property technology. Have you got any advice for, surveyors looking to make the jump?
Yeah, I think you have to remember, when I decided to leave, I guess, the traditional surveying role that you talk about to sort of join VTS, the idea of prop tech as we know it today was definitely in its infancy. FinTech was the buzzword. We were just getting introduced to mobile banking. And if you think about, 5 years ago, the idea of mobile banking and that pretty simple concept, how it has such a dramatic impact on the way we use real estate. We use the local branch, your bank, your high street bank, etc. The idea of digitalizing the commercial real industry was just that, right? It was an idea. It was kind of a concept. What I would say is 5 years on, the industry has definitely moved on. And I would argue that prop tech is no longer an idea. and the idea of prop tech and where it sits in the industry, I think is a bit less risky. I would argue that technology and prop tech and innovation and digitalization and whatever other words you want to use to kind of, bucket it all together, I think it's fully ingrained as part of the industry now. And so a move from a traditional surveying role into a position at a fast-growing technology business is perhaps seen as less risky move in today's market, but maybe just the same as moving from JLL, a services business, to client side, moving from JLL to Landsec or whatever it might be. I think it is it is simply another aspect of the industry that creates a different type of opportunity. Like all companies, not every company is created equal, so you should do your research. But I don't think it is seen today as a move out of the industry or a risky prospect in joining a prop tech company. And I would argue that some of the more recent moves and hires in recent years are testament to that, that it's not leaving the industry. It's just moving into a different role within the industry with a different challenge and a different opportunity.
Yeah, definitely sort of facilitating it as well. Look, Charlie, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today, but unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the Propcast. Is there any bit of parting information you'd like to share with the audience and the best way for them to connect with you and find out more about VTS?
As always, please feel free to reach out to me directly or any of the team, whether you are considering an opportunity where, as you know, Lisa, we're constantly hiring. We've got new roles opening up all the time. You'll have seen, recent sort of press announcement or news articles that 2021 is quite a big year for us in a local UK market. So if you are a client, if you are a prospect, if you are, someone in the industry that just wants to learn more about technology or commercial real estate or how the two have collided over the last few years, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I wish everybody a successful 2021. I hope that it is a very different year to 2020, albeit I think that we've got a few more headwinds to sort of navigate through in the early part of the year. And, I'm very much looking forward to working with everyone and anyone as we kind of go into, a different market and hopefully one that sees a lot more opportunity for everyone out there.
Awesome. Well, look, Charlie, thank you again for joining us. And I'm looking forward to catching up with you after the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our special guests. Make sure you visit our website, www.lmre.co.uk, where you can subscribe to our show, or you'll find us on iTunes and Spotify, where all good content is found. Whilst you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate if you could rate and review us on iTunes, or if you simply just spread the word. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday, and I'll catch you later.
Hi, this is Nelson from Property Quants. I'd like to invite you to join our Introduction to Data Science and Machine Learning for Real Estate seminar. To learn more, visit propertyquants.com/seminar and use special code LMRE20 on Eventbrite for a discount.
You're listening to a Podcast Company podcast. This was made by Podcast Syndicator, where we help you go from start to grow to making money with your podcast. Let us help you share your message and your voice with the world. Reach out now, Jason at podcastsyndicator.com or Brett at podcastsyndicator.com to find out more. Thank you for listening, and do come back to hear nothing but the best podcasts.